All right, there it is. All right, so I am Susan Birkhoff, and I'm a nurse scientist here at Christiana Care Health System. And I'm going to talk about the study that I did complete back in the middle of 2017. And this was a big part of my dissertation study. So for time limitations, I only pulled out a few of the salient points to talk about it. But I very quickly just wanted to mention, because I have a bunch of different people listed behind my name with this study. So I had Dr. Marianne Cantrell, she was my dissertation chair. I had Dr. Helene Moriarty, she was my dissertation member. I had Dr. Bob Lustig, and he is a attending radiation oncologist at Penn, and Marianne Heverly, who helped me with my statistics. And so my presentation, I am going to talk about the usability and acceptability of a patient-centered mobile health tracking app, and it was within a sample of adult radiation oncology patients. And originally, when I was thinking about the study, I really wanted to look at clinical outcomes. However, when I was looking in the literature, the gap was as wide as the ocean. So I had to back it up and actually look at usability and acceptability as a first step. So I will be talking about a specific app that I did partner with to run this study, but I do not have any conflicts of interest. I do not have any financial disclosures as I talk about this app. So a quick background for anyone who does not have an oncology background is more than 1.7 million people are diagnosed with cancer in the US. And there isn't projections for 2019 because I wanted to see if I could update the slide, but that's still the standing one. And about 40% of men and women will develop cancer in their lifetime. And of those people who do develop cancer, about 50%, they do need to receive radiation therapy as part of their treatment regimen. And a little background on mobile health apps. So in the US, we know smartphones are everywhere. Most people do have a smartphone. And currently, in 2017, there isn't even an updated, I tried to see if there was something for 2019, but the latest statistics from 2017, there are over 325,000 mobile health apps that are commercially available for download. And in 2017, 3.7 billion, they did download app, and this was in comparison to 1.7 billion, so it's certainly on the rise. And I do have an updated statistic because, money is important. So in 2019, the global health market is valued at $45 billion. So the significance of the study, and I did mention some of it, is so patients who are receiving radiation therapy, it may be radiation on its own, it may be concurrent with chemotherapy, but it's a long treatment, it's a grueling treatment. Usually it's 5 days a week for up to 6 weeks is how they receive treatment. And as they go through treatment, they start developing side effects from it. And side effects, the common ones are fatigue and skin reactions. However, wherever the area is being irradiated, they can certainly have many more side effects associated with it. And these health tracking apps can be particularly useful because as patients go through treatments, that's when they're going to start seeing side effects from the treatments and help kind of track that and trend, what's happening. So as I said before, I was really interested in maybe patient-reported outcomes or, the clinical impact. However, when I went to the literature, the gap was seriously as wide as the ocean. And I'm like, wow, I couldn't look at other studies to say this worked or that worked within this population with mobile health apps. So I had to back it up to, if I gave you an app, would you use it? Because we all know you can design the most fabulous piece of technology, but if it's too hard to use or there's something that's just amiss with your intended user, they're not going to use it. So that's why I backed it up to a usability acceptability study. And it's a first step, and it's a building block to eventually get to the clinical outcomes or patient-reported outcomes. And I'm not moving. Uh-oh. Is it moving forward for anybody else? Oh no. My slide's stuck. Is it stuck for everybody else?
It's stuck, yeah.
Oh, there it goes. Woo, okay. So the purpose of my study is to examine the usability and acceptability of this patient-centered mobile health tracking app, and it is called Health Storylines, and it was in the sample of adult radiation oncology patients. So this is a screenshot of what the app used to look like. I mean, it has completely done an overhaul, but back then this is what it looked like. And you can certainly go on to Google Play, or you can go to the Apple Store, and you can, if you want to take a look at it, you certainly can. I mean, it's free to download. But this is what it looked like when I conducted my study. So on the left-hand part of your screen, that's your landing page. When you opened it up, that's the tiles that you saw. And these are different mini or app features within the whole app platform that patients could click on, they could use, and there was no requirement for them to use it. Whatever they want to use, it was up to them. And then on the right-hand side of the screen, that's a sub-menu. So you had to tap on a little icon, and then the submenu would appear. And I purposely highlighted or put a yellow box around the circle of support and the to-do list. And I just want you to remember that these are sitting on a submenu, and it takes an extra click to get to these two specific tools, because that's going to be something I'm going to talk about when a couple slides down the road. But this is what it looked like for patients who enrolled in the study and used the app. So I was originally going to take this slide out, just because of time constraints. However, I did want to demonstrate that there was a lot of checking, double checking, triple checking to ensure patients' privacy and confidentiality with an outside app, and bring it in to a health system and having patients put their information onto it. So of course I worked with Penn Medicine's IRB, and because I was earning my PhD from Villanova, I had to have approval with their IB, but that was exempt status. I also, because of the way Penn set up in the Abramson Cancer Center, they have their own IRB that's just for oncology, and they are no joke. So I had to also work with CTS RMC as well, along with the other two IRBs, to ensure all the safeguards are in place for patients. And then also, because this is a piece of technology, I had to work with Penn's IT security specialist team as well to ensure that the app itself had all the highest safeguards in place. They were HIPAA compliant, to ensure patients' privacy and confidentiality. So it took a little bit of time to work through all these moving pieces, but I did, and could launch my study. And so the methods, I had a concurrent nested mixed methods design. And so I was collecting both quantitative and qualitative, but predominantly the priority was for the quantitative data. I did have a pre-app use survey, and that was just to collect demographic information and just some baseline information about apps and app use and app features. And then the second part of it was the digital analytics that were recording when patients or participants were using the Health Storylines app, and that was for a 2-week span. And then I had a post-app survey that was actually pushed out through the app, and that was after 2 weeks to gather feedback about their usage and why they're using certain features or why they didn't use other features. And so it was a mix of quantitative and qualitative survey. So my sample and setting, so I had 60 adult oncology patients, and they were actively receiving proton or photon radiation therapy. And photon is also known as LINAC. I know here in Delaware, it's LINAC, LINAC only or photon only they have here. And then my setting was the Roberts Proton Therapy Center, and that sits within the Perelman Center of Advanced Medicine. So here are my sample demographics, and I broke them into two because there was different pieces of the study. Not everyone completed all the pieces of the study. So on the left-hand column are people who did complete it, and then on the right-hand column were participants who did not complete the study. And as you can see, they're very similar when you just break them down, and that's why I put them together. Really the only difference that between like the demographics were treatment. Like if they were early or late into treatment, like 1 to 3 weeks versus 4 to 6 weeks. And so people who were later in the treatment, they were less likely to complete the study. I mean, I can certainly speculate why, but they were less likely to complete the study. So I only could pull out a couple since it was part of a dissertation. I had a lot of data and a lot of research questions, but I pulled out more of the salient ones. So the graph that I built here, this is based on a digital analytics. This is what the computer is capturing every time someone was clicking on one of the mini app tools to use. And also I never like saw content. So if someone was putting like recording their moods or they were journaling, I never ever saw the content. It was just unique identifier and how many times that person was clicking on the moods, but never what their mood was, or how many times they clicked on the journal to write an entry, but never ever their personal information. I could never see that. But this was over the 2-week trial, and you can kind of see, what they were using. And so this is where I wanted to point out. You can see that, like from tool library down to vital signs, they were using it. However, to-do list and circle of support, not used at all. And those two were sitting on that submenu that took an extra click to get to it, and it wasn't used at all. It was not sitting on that landing page for them. And then this is some of the, when I pushed out a post-app survey, this was some of the feedback that I received. And so I'll just, the themes, certain apps were useful to people. There were 11 altogether, 11 different mini app tools that they could use. And, people weren't using all of them, and only certain ones that they did use and they did like. They felt it was helpful to track their health. They thought it provided good reminders. Some people felt like they didn't use it that much. And another big one was customization was important. Like, they liked certain tools, but they wanted to see more features that they needed within a tool. So then another big research question I was really curious about, I don't know about anybody else, but I know for me, like at one point I put a Fitbit on and I was like, yeah, this is going to be great. And within like a week, I was like, oh, well, first of all, I thought it was ugly. And second of all, I was like, all right, I know like on certain days I have these many steps, and I stopped using it. And so I was really curious to see, was the usage really dropping off? And I mean, it did decrease in week 2. However, it wasn't significant. Of course, we always want to see significant results, but it's actually the one time where it's actually a good thing I didn't have significance, because people really were still using the app in week 2. And, most likely because it's serving a purpose for them, that they're still using it and didn't just drop off and they, put it away, never to see it again. And then this research question, I thought about actually taking the slide out, but then I thought, well, because it is really simple. Like, is the app easy to use? And it's kind of like, I don't know, it seems too simple. But I thought it was important to keep in, because you can, or anyone can build or use or say, hey, we're going to bring this into a health system, this app, or this piece of technology, because we feel like it's really going to benefit patients. But it could be the most beautiful thing that can do so much and has so much potential. But if it is too darn hard to use, too much of a cognitive load, patients are not going to use it. So I really wanted to see, is this easy to use? Simple question, but a really important question. And most patients or participants in the study, they felt that it was easy to use. And then when I gathered within that 2-week time span it's much larger if I included everyone who used the app, but the ones who completed the study. So for the 32 participants who completed it, they used the app 711 times over a 2-week course, a length of time. And so they really were using it, and they were using it a lot. So I certainly had limitations. So sample size, of course, was a big limitation. And I had a high percentage of attrition. And there were different pieces to it. Like, I was with all patients when they completed the pre-app survey. But then, they were off to use the app if they wanted to, didn't want to. Most people did use the app. However, they didn't do the post-app survey. And so, that was a bummer. And so that caused like a high part of the attrition. They just didn't complete that third step. I also had a very highly educated sample. I mean, everyone who could, everyone who met the inclusion and exclusion criteria were in the sample when I pitched it to them. It just so happened that I ended up with a highly educated sample. And that was even for people who didn't complete the study. They were highly educated as well. My survey tools have face validity. At the time, I know now there's a MARS scale out there, which is a mobile app rating scale. At the time, there was no such thing. So, I did have digital analytics, which are very precise. But part as the survey tools, they only had face validity. And then another limitation, the Health Storylines app was very specific. It had very specific tools. It had a certain layout, it had certain features. And so if I went in with a different app tool, I could have had a completely different outcome from it. So they're not all the same. So lessons that I learned from this were definitely maintaining contact with participants. So I met them. to pitch a study, consent them, and they complete the pre-app survey. But then, like I let them go, and then I sent 2 follow-up emails. But I think in hindsight, it would have been great if I would have at least touched base with them, like face to face again, to see like, are you having any issues? Anything I can help you with? And the reason why I didn't do that is I was just thinking that they're receiving radiation therapy. They might have concurrent chemotherapy. I just didn't want to bother them. But I think that face to face one more time probably would have helped with the study, and I would have had less attrition. And I always had a really good rapport with the patients. I really enjoyed meeting them and talking to them. So it would have been nice to one more touch base with them. Also, utilizing different healthcare providers to help maintain engagement with the app. Maybe the nurses, just as a proxy for me, just checking in, asking, how's it going? And if you need anything, please contact Susan. I think that would have helped as well. I didn't have time to talk about it. However, all the young millennials gave me a hard no. I was so excited when I got like 2 in the study. I was like, yes, here we go. Everyone thought, I thought, millennials are going to eat this up, going to eat it up like dessert, and they didn't. They were like, no, thank you. So another time maybe I could talk more about it, but it was interesting that they shot me down. And then one thing that I noticed that I didn't expect were when I was pitching the study to the patient, they normally had a family member or they had a loved one or a caregiver with them, and the family members and caregivers were so interested in it. They're like, can I do it? Can I be part of the study? Can I have the app? The response, I mean, granted, this is anecdotally, but the response was overwhelming how they wanted to be a part of it as well, and they wanted to help. And I mean, I'm speculating, but maybe it's a sense of, control or help, or just doing something extra for their loved one during the stressful time. So my recommendations for future research, certainly evaluating other app tools that can really help the needs of this patient population. Also studying young millennial engagement with a health tracking app, since they all shot me down. And then, of course, examination of sustained engagement, because I did mine over a 2-week time. Who knows what it would look like at 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 2 months. And then also, we definitely need to have RCTs to actually examine clinical outcomes. Like once we can figure out the combination of app features and sustained engagement, then looking at the RCTs to examine whether apps have a impact on clinical outcome. And implications for healthcare, of course, designs and features matter. As I demonstrated in a few slides earlier, patients, they had to do this like one click. You think, one click isn't going to make a difference, but it clearly did make a difference. That they had to hit one more button to get to the submenu, and they weren't doing it. It just wasn't there. Maybe the other icon wasn't big enough. I'm not sure, but it does demonstrate the designs and features do matter, and a lot of care needs to go into that. And then apps need to change with patients. Some of the feedback was it needs to be customized. They like certain things, but especially with oncology, as patients go through treatment, whether it's chemo, radiation, their health needs change. And if you're going to use an app, it needs to change with them. It needs to be very flexible and change as their health needs change. And then age matters too. Again, this goes back to the millennials. I couldn't believe it. I had more 80-something-year-olds in my study than 20-something-year-olds. It was crazy. So age matters. And then also health literacy. That was not something that I was measuring, but I am very interested in, because patients need to have just a certain level of literacy. Then they have to have health literacy on top of it. And now we're asking for like digital literacy on top of that. So I'm kind of curious about the health literacy piece of it and how that can be leveraged with technology. And then, nowadays, everything needs to talk to one another. Interoperability of systems and devices is really important. They want everything to communicate with the EHR. Very important, not having standalone systems. And so my conclusions, this certainly contributed to a limited body of knowledge. The gap still is wide as the ocean, but it's a little less after the study. And then, the findings, patients really did. They really liked the Health Storylines app. They found it usable and acceptable. And of course, this health tracking apps, it really does appear to have a potential to use for this patient population and this to help them through their cancer journey. And those are my references. And that's it.